Room for one more begins when small-town librarian Callie Monroe, exhausted from travel, accidentally falls asleep in the wrong hotel suite, only to wake in the bed of Charleston's most eligible and guarded millionaire. But was it really just a mistake or a twist of fate? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Callie Monroe rubbed her tired eyes as she dragged her suitcase through the ornate lobby of the Charleston Grand, a boutique hotel that screamed luxury from every polished surface. At 40, she was too old for red-eye flights, but it had been the only affordable option to make it in time for her niece's wedding. "Welcome to the Charleston Grand. How may I help you?" The young man at the reception desk barely looked up from his computer. Checking in. Callie Monroe. "My sister made the reservation," she said, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. The clerk typed rapidly. "Ah, yes, Ms. Monroe. Your sister upgraded you to one of our premium suites." He slid a keycard across the marble counter. "Room 512. Elevators are to your right." "Thank you," Callie mumbled, too exhausted to appreciate the upgrade. After a flight delay, a missing luggage scare, and a rental car mix-up that took 2 hours to sort out, all she wanted was sleep. The elevator doors opened to a hallway with plush carpet that muffled her footsteps. Following the signs, she found room 512 and slid the keycard. The green light flashed, and she pushed open the door. The suite was beautiful, elegant without being stuffy, with warm lighting that made the cream-colored walls glow. A huge bed dominated the space, covered in what looked like the softest sheets she'd ever seen. A chocolate sat on each pillow. "Well, Jenny really went all out," Callie muttered to herself, dropping her bag by the door. She kicked off her shoes and didn't even bother changing out of her travel clothes. The call of that bed was too strong after 3 hours of fitful airplane sleep. She curled up on top of the covers, pulled a throw blanket over her shoulders, and was asleep within minutes. Grayson Fox loosened his tie as he entered his private suite at the Charleston Grand. At 46, he'd built one of the most successful real estate development companies in the Southeast, but days like today made him question if it was worth the hassle. The dinner with investors had run late, and all he wanted was a shower and sleep. He frowned when he saw the "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging on his door. He hadn't put it there. Using his master keycard, he entered quietly, wondering if his assistant had arranged some kind of surprise meeting. The main living area was empty, but as he approached the bedroom, he stopped short. There, curled up on his bed, was a woman he'd never seen before, fast asleep. Her chestnut hair was spread across his pillow, and she'd managed to wrap herself in the throw blanket while simultaneously pushing all the covers to one side. Grayson stood frozen, trying to make sense of the situation. Had his assistant double-booked the suite? Was this some elaborate scheme by a fan or gold digger? But as he watched her sleep, something told him this wasn't planned. The woman looked genuinely exhausted, her face relaxed in deep slumber. She murmured something that sounded like peach cobbler and pulled the blanket tighter. Despite the strange situation, Grayson found himself smiling. He could wake her and sort this out, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the peaceful look on her face, or maybe he was just tired of the predictability of his life. Whatever the reason, he quietly backed out of the room, grabbed a spare blanket from the closet, and made himself comfortable in the guest bedroom. "Whoever you are," he whispered to himself, "you look like you need sleep more than I need answers. Right now." Callie woke to sunlight streaming through partly opened curtains. For a moment, she had no idea where she was, then remembered her sister's fancy hotel. She stretched, feeling more rested than she had in months. Then she noticed the breakfast tray on the bedside table. Fresh coffee in a silver pot, pastries and fresh fruit arranged perfectly. Had Jenny arranged this too? And was that wine breathing in a crystal decanter on the desk? She sat up, confused, and that's when she saw him. A man was leaning against the window frame, looking out at the Charleston skyline. Tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair that looked artfully tousled. He wore linen pants and a casual button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing tanned forearms. He held 2 coffee mugs in his hands. Callie gasped, scrambling backward on the bed. The man turned, and Callie's breath caught. He was handsome in that weathered, confident way that only came with age and success. His eyes were kind, with lines at the corners, and his smile was genuine as he looked at her. "You looked like you needed sleep more than answers," he said, his voice deep and warm. "Coffee?" Callie pulled the blanket up to her chin, heart racing. "Who are you? What are you doing in my room?" he chuckled. "Actually, it's my room. I'm Grayson Fox, and you are—" "Your room?" Callie looked around, noticing for the first time the masculine touches she'd missed in her exhaustion. A man's watch on the dresser, a suit jacket draped over a chair. "Oh my God. Oh no. I take it you're not a corporate spy or an overzealous—" "Fan then," Grayson said, looking amused rather than angry. Callie's cheeks burned with embarrassment. "The clerk gave me the wrong room key. It worked. I'm so sorry. I was so tired. I should go." She started to get up, then remembered she was still in yesterday's rumpled clothes. "I figured I'd wait and see who fate decided to drop into." "My suite," Grayson said, walking over and setting one of the coffee mugs on the nightstand beside her. "I didn't expect a woman who steals all the covers and mumbles in her sleep about peach cobbler." "I do not talk in my sleep," Callie protested, then stopped. "Do I? Something about your grandmother's recipe being better than Paula Dean's," Grayson confirmed with a twinkle in his eye. Callie covered her face with her hands. "This is mortifying. I'm Callie Monroe. My sister booked me a room here for my niece's wedding, room 512. This is room 521. Dyslexic clerk, perhaps? I need to go." Callie scrambled out of bed, looking for her shoes. "Hold on," Grayson said, not moving to stop her physically, but something in his gentle tone made her pause. "Breakfast is already here. Might as well stay. We can both pretend we're normal people for a morning." Callie hesitated, looking from the tempting breakfast tray to the door. "Why aren't you angry? I slept in your bed. And I slept in the guest room. No harm done." He shrugged. "Besides, it's the most interesting thing that's happened to me in months." Against her better judgment, Callie found herself settling back on the bed. She accepted the coffee mug he offered, taking a sip. It was perfect, strong but not bitter, with just a hint of cream. "So," Grayson said, taking a seat in the armchair across from her, "you're here for a wedding?" "My niece, Jenny. She's marrying. A local boy. Big society affair, apparently. My sister went all out. Charleston weddings usually are. Who's the groom?" "Daniel Pearson. His family owns some kind of shipping company." Grayson's eyebrows rose. "Pearson Maritime. That's a major business around here." "Great," Callie sighed. "So I'm even more out of place than I thought." "You don't like weddings?" Grayson asked, offering her the pastry plate. Callie took a croissant. "I like them fine. I'm just not good at the fancy small talk that goes with high society events. My sister Margaret married well. I'm the practical one who stayed home to care for our parents. Sounds like you got the raw end of the deal." "I don't regret it," Callie said, surprised by her own honesty with this stranger. "They were good people. They deserved someone there for them at the end." Grayson studied her with new interest. "What do you do now, Callie Monroe?" "I manage a small library in Cooperville, Georgia. Nothing exciting." "I disagree. Books are magical things," Callie laughed. "That's what I tell the kids who come in for story time." "And what brought you to Charleston on a red-eye, looking exhausted enough to pass out in a stranger's bed?" "Budget," Callie admitted. "Wedding season means expensive flights. Plus I had to get someone to cover my shifts at the library." Grayson nodded, then surprised her by asking, "What did you want to be when you grew up, Callie?" The question caught her off guard. "That's an odd question for breakfast with a stranger. We're past the stranger stage. You slept in my bed, remember?" Callie felt her cheeks warm again, but she found herself answering honestly. "I always dreamed of opening a bed and breakfast, something small, just 6 or 7 rooms, where I could cook for the guests and make them feel at home." "Why didn't you?" "Life. My dad had his first stroke when I was 28. Mom developed Alzheimer's a few years later. By the time they were both gone, it seemed too late to start over." "It's never too late," Grayson said, his eyes serious now. "What about you?" Callie asked, eager to change the subject. "Were you always destined to be a—" She realized she didn't actually know what he did. "Real estate developer," Grayson supplied. And no, I wanted to be a chef. Really, you? He laughed at her surprise. Is that so hard to believe? You just seem so corporate. That's the suit talking. If you'd seen me at 2 in the morning, experimenting with sauces in my kitchen, you'd have a different impression. So why real estate instead of restaurants? Family expectations. The Fox name is old money in Charleston. My father made it clear that culinary school wasn't an option. Grayson's face clouded briefly. I took the path of least resistance. And now? Now I own half of downtown Charleston and eat at 5-star restaurants where chefs create the dishes I once dreamed of making. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The American dream, right? They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Callie couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so at ease with someone she'd just met. You know what the strangest part of success is? Grayson said suddenly. My money never brought me the one thing I craved, authenticity. Everyone wants something from me. Investors, business partners, women. It's exhausting never knowing if people like you or what you can give them. Callie looked at him over her coffee cup. That sounds lonely. It is. Grayson held her gaze. What about you? Someone special back in Cooperville? Callie shook her head. Not for a long time. Small town, small dating pool. I'm tired of pretending. I'm okay being alone, but I've made peace with it. Have you? Grayson challenged gently. Before Callie could answer, her phone rang. She fished it out of her pocket. It's my sister, probably wondering where I am. You should get that, Callie answered, listening as her sister rapid-fired questions about her arrival. Yes, I'm here. No, everything's fine. Just a mix-up with the room. I'll meet you for lunch. Yes, I have the dress. Love you too. She hung up and gave Grayson an apologetic look. I should go. Family obligations. Of course, he stood collecting their empty plates. Let me walk you to your actual room. You don't have to. I insist. Charleston hospitality. They gathered her things, and Grayson led her down the hall to room 512. Callie was acutely aware of how different they must look. Her in yesterday's wrinkled clothes, him looking like he stepped out of a luxury catalogue. At her door, Callie turned to thank him, suddenly shy. Thank you for being so understanding about all this. Most men would have called security. Most women would have screamed when they woke up to find a strange man in their room, Grayson countered with a smile. It's your room, Callie reminded him. Details. His smile faded into something more serious. Tonight, dinner, my room, yours if you want it. We'll toast to mistaken identities. Callie hesitated. Was he asking her on a date? I'm not the kind of woman you usually entertain. Good, he said, his eyes warm. I'm tired of that kind of woman. I'd rather entertain someone real. Her heart raced, but caution kept her from agreeing immediately. I'll think about it. Grayson nodded, accepting her hesitation. Fair enough, the invitation stands. He reached into his pocket and handed her a business card. My cell is on there. Let me know either way. As she watched him walk away, Callie couldn't help but wonder if she'd just experienced the most bizarre meet-cute in history, or if the universe was playing a cruel joke on a small-town librarian who'd stopped believing in romantic endings. Long ago, she slipped his card into her pocket and entered her real room, already wondering what she might wear to dinner if she found the courage to say yes. You what? Margaret Monroe Hayes nearly choked on her iced tea as Callie explained what had happened that morning. They were sitting at an upscale restaurant near the harbor, the kind with white tablecloths and waiters who refilled your water after every sip. It was an honest mistake, Callie said, fidgeting with her napkin. The room key worked. How was I supposed to know? Margaret, 3 years older than Callie and perfectly put together in a designer dress, shook her head. Only you could accidentally sleep in a stranger's bed and end up with a breakfast date. It wasn't a date, Callie protested. It was damage control. And dinner tonight. Is that damage control too? Callie hadn't planned to tell her sister about Grayson's invitation, but Margaret had a way of dragging information out of her. I haven't decided if I'm going. Callie Monroe. Of course you're going. Margaret leaned forward, lowering her voice. Do you have any idea who Grayson Fox is? A real estate developer, he said. Margaret rolled her eyes. He's not just any developer. He's one of the wealthiest men in Charleston. Old family money plus new investments. He's been the city's most eligible bachelor for years. Callie's stomach sank. Great. Now I really can't go. What are you talking about? This is the opportunity of a lifetime. For what? To be his charity project? The sad small-town librarian he took pity on? Margaret's expression softened. Is that really how you see yourself? Callie looked away, watching boats drift by in the harbor. I'm just being realistic. Men like that don't seriously date women like me. And what kind of woman are you exactly? You know what I mean, Meg. I'm 40, I wear sensible shoes, and the most exciting thing that happened to me last month was getting a new coffee maker for the library break room. Margaret reached across the table and took Callie's hand. You're also smart, kind, and beautiful when you bother to notice. Maybe Grayson Fox saw what I've been telling you for years. Callie squeezed her sister's hand, grateful for the encouragement, even if she didn't fully believe it. Maybe he's just bored and I'm a novelty. Only one way to find out. Back in her room, her actual room, Callie stared at the contents of her suitcase spread across the bed. Nothing seemed right for dinner with a millionaire. She had packed. For a wedding, not a date with Charleston royalty. Her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Still hoping to see you tonight. Sevens? Grayson. Her heart did a little flip. She sat on the edge of the bed, his business card in one hand, phone in the other. What was she doing even considering this? Before she could talk herself out of it, she typed, "I'll be there. Room service?" The response came immediately. "Perfect. Bring your appetite and nothing else." Callie felt her cheeks flush. What did that mean? Just as panic started to rise, another text appeared. "That came out wrong. I meant I'm taking care of everything. Just bring yourself." She laughed out loud, relieved. There was something endearing about his awkward recovery. The knock at her door made her jump. A bellhop stood in the hallway with a large white box. Delivery for Ms. Monroe. Puzzled, Callie accepted the box and carried it to the bed. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a simple but elegant blue dress with a note. "In case you didn't pack for unexpected dinner invitations, wear this if you like. If not, wear whatever makes you comfortable." Callie lifted the dress. It was gorgeous. Not too formal, not too casual, and exactly her size. How had he known? She checked the tag. It was from a boutique in the hotel. He must have asked someone for help. The gesture was both thoughtful and presumptuous. Was she being courted or managed? Did it matter if the dress was perfect? She laid it against herself, looking in the mirror. For the first time in years, she felt a flutter of excitement about getting dressed up for a man. At precisely 7:00, Callie stood outside room 521, wearing Grayson's gift and a pair of low heels she'd packed for the wedding. She'd spent an hour on her hair and makeup, only to make it look like she'd spent 10 minutes. Natural but better. Wasn't that what women's magazines always recommended? She knocked softly, suddenly nervous. Grayson opened the door, and for a moment, all they did was look at each other. He'd changed into dark pants and a light blue button-down that somehow matched her dress perfectly. His hair was damp, as if he'd just showered, and he smelled like expensive cologne. "You look beautiful," he said finally, stepping aside to let her in. "The dress is perfect," Callie said, "and thank you. Though you didn't have to." "I wanted to," he interrupted gently. "And you would have looked beautiful no matter what you wore." The room had been transformed. The lights were dimmed, candles flickered on the dining table, and soft jazz played. From hidden speakers, a bottle of wine breathed beside 2 crystal glasses, and covered plates waited on the table. "This is a lot," Callie said, trying not to show how overwhelmed she felt. "Too much?" Grayson asked, suddenly uncertain. His vulnerability made her smile. "No, it's lovely. I'm just not used to such attention to detail." "I'm a detail person," he admitted, pulling out her chair. "Occupational hazard." As they settled at the table, Grayson revealed their dinner. Low country cuisine prepared by the hotel's executive. "Chef, shrimp and grits, fresh bread, roasted vegetables." "I hope you're not allergic to seafood," he said as he poured the wine. "I probably should have asked." "It's perfect," Callie assured him. "I love shrimp and grits." "Good Southern girl," he teased. "Born and raised," she confirmed, taking a sip of wine. "It was excellent, of course. Conversation flowed more easily than Callie had expected. They talked about books they loved, places they'd visited, and foods they enjoyed. Grayson was well-traveled, but spoke about his adventures without showing off. He seemed genuinely interested in her simpler life, asking questions about the library and the children who came for story time. "What made you want to be a librarian?" he asked as they moved from dinner to dessert, peach cobbler, in a nod to her sleep-talking. Callie laughed when she saw it. "I can't believe you remembered that. I'm curious if it lives up to your grandmother's recipe." "Not a chance," she said after tasting it. "Good, but missing her secret ingredient, which was? If I told you, it wouldn't be a secret." She took another bite. "To answer your question, I became a librarian because books were my escape growing up. We didn't have much money, but the library was free. I could go anywhere, be anyone through stories." Grayson watched her, a soft expression on his face. "You light up when you talk about books." "Do I?" "Yes. It's refreshing to see someone so passionate about their work." "What about you?" Callie asked. "Do you enjoy what you do, even if it wasn't your first choice?" Grayson considered this. "I've made peace with it. I'm good at it, and I've tried to focus on projects that revitalize neighborhoods rather than just making money. That's admirable. It's practical. Charleston is my home. I want it to thrive." He refilled their wine glasses. "But enough about work. Tell me about this bed and breakfast you wanted to open." Callie hesitated, then found herself describing her dream in detail. A Victorian house with wraparound porches, gardens where she'd grow herbs for cooking, rooms named after her favorite literary characters. "It sounds wonderful," Grayson said when she finished. "Why do you talk about it in the past tense?" "Because dreams have expiration dates." "Says who?" "Says reality," Callie replied. "I'm 40 with limited savings and no business experience." "Those are obstacles, not barriers," Grayson countered. "Have you ever even looked into what it would take?" Callie felt a flicker of irritation. "That's easy for you to say. You probably had a trust fund to start your business." As soon as the words left her mouth, she regretted them. Grayson's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "That was unfair." "No, you're right," he said quietly. "I had advantages most people don't. But that doesn't mean your dream isn't valid, Callie." An uncomfortable silence fell. Callie stared at her wineglass, mentally kicking herself for ruining the mood. "Let me ask you something," Grayson said finally. "If money wasn't an issue, would you still want that life? Running a B&B, cooking for strangers, being tied to one place?" The question caught her off guard. Yes, I think I would." "Then it's not a dead dream. It's just waiting." Callie met his gaze, touched by his perspective. "You're an optimist." "I'm a realist who's seen enough to know that most barriers aren't as solid as they appear." As they finished dessert, the conversation turned to her niece's wedding. Grayson knew the Pearson family and filled her in on some background that Margaret had conveniently left out, including rumors that the bride's father wasn't entirely happy with the match. "Drama at a Southern wedding." "I'm shocked," Callie said dryly. Grayson laughed. "It wouldn't be a Charleston society event without it." They moved to the balcony, where the night air was warm and carried the scent of the ocean. The city lights sparkled below them, and the stars twinkled above. It was painfully romantic, and Callie felt a growing sense of surreality. "This doesn't feel like my life," she admitted, leaning against the railing. "Whose life does it feel like?" Grayson asked, standing close but not touching her. "Someone more interesting? Someone who deserves this kind of evening?" Grayson turned to face her. "Has it occurred to you that you might be selling yourself short?" "It's been suggested," Callie said with a small smile. "By people who care about you?" "My sister, my best friend back home." "Smart people, then," Grayson said. He reached out slowly and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Maybe you should listen to them." The touch of his fingers against her skin sent a shiver through her. It had been so long since a man had touched her with such care, such deliberate tenderness. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Doing what?" "This. Dinner, the dress, being so nice to someone who broke into your hotel room." Grayson smiled. You had a key, that's hardly breaking in. You know what I mean. He was quiet for a moment, considering her question. When I woke up this morning, I expected today to be like every other day. Meetings, phone calls, decisions about property I don't care about. Then I found you sleeping in my bed. And suddenly, the day had a question mark. I like question marks, Callie. They're rare in my life. So I'm a novelty, she said, trying not to sound disappointed. You're authentic, he corrected. Do you know how hard that is to find in my world? Everyone wants something from me. Everyone has an angle. You're just you. You don't know me, Callie pointed out. I'm learning, Grayson countered, and I like what I'm discovering. He was standing very close now. Callie could see the faint lines around his eyes, the shadow of beard on his jaw. He was handsome in that mature, confident way that made her feel both nervous and exhilarated. I should go, she said, though it was the last thing she wanted. Should you? Yes, this is, she gestured vaguely. This is temporary. I'm leaving after the wedding. You live here, we live in different worlds. What if we didn't have to? Callie laughed nervously. Now you're being ridiculous. Am I? Grayson took her hand, his thumb, brushing across her knuckles. What if this is the universe giving us both a second chance at something? At what? At not settling. At taking a risk. His voice dropped lower. At finding someone who sees us for who we really are. The sincerity in his eyes made her heart race. This was moving too fast, and yet it didn't feel wrong. It felt like catching up to something that should have happened years ago. I don't know what to say, she admitted. You don't have to say anything, Grayson replied. Just don't run away because you're scared this might be real. He was so close now that she could feel the warmth of his breath. It would be so easy to lean in, to let herself be kissed by this man who seemed to see something in her that she'd forgotten was there. Instead, she took a small step back. I should go. The rehearsal dinner is tomorrow, and I promised Margaret, so I'd help with some things in the morning. Disappointment flickered across Grayson's face, but he nodded. Of course. Thank you for dinner. It was lovely. Will I see you again before you leave? He asked as he walked her to the door. Callie hesitated. I don't know. The wedding. I could be your +1. When she looked surprised, he added, The Pearsons always invite me to these things. I usually decline, but for you, I'd make an exception. I don't have a +1, Callie said. Budget? Cuts? Grayson smiled. I know the groom's family. I'm sure it won't be a problem. At the door, he took her hand again. Think about it, no pressure. Callie nodded, unable to find the right words. He leaned down and placed a soft kiss on her cheek, his lips warm against her skin. Good night, Callie Monroe. Good night, she whispered, and slipped out the door before she could change her mind about leaving. Back in her room, Callie kicked off her shoes and sat on the edge of the bed, replaying the evening in her mind. What was she doing? Getting involved with a man like Grayson, Fox was asking for heartbreak. He lived in a world of wealth and privilege that she could never belong in, and yet he'd made her feel seen in a way no one had in years. Not as a caretaker or a reliable sister or a small-town librarian, but as a woman with dreams and desires, and value. As she got ready for bed, her phone chimed with a text. In case you were wondering, your grandmother was right. That peach cobbler doesn't hold a candle to what you described in your sleep. Despite herself, Callie smiled. One dinner. Didn't have to mean anything. It could just be a nice memory, a story to tell when she got back home. Remember that time I accidentally slept in a millionaire's bed? She slipped under the covers, telling herself it was better this way. Keep it simple, no complications. But as sleep claimed her, she couldn't help but wonder what might happen. If just once, she took a risk on something completely impractical, like falling for a man who lived in a different world. Callie spent the next morning helping her sister with wedding preparations, stuffing welcome bags with Charleston souvenirs, and miniature bottles of champagne. She'd told Margaret about her dinner with Grayson, carefully editing out the more emotional moments. So he wants to be your date to the wedding? Margaret asked, tying a ribbon on another bag. And you said no. I said I'd think about it, Callie corrected, adding a packet of local cookies to a bag. What's there to think about? He's handsome, successful, and clearly interested in you. That's exactly the problem. Why would someone like him be interested in someone like me? Margaret set down her ribbon and faced her sister. Because you're wonderful, and apparently he's smart enough to see that. Or he's bored and I'm a distraction. Or, you've been alone so long you can't recognize genuine interest when you see it. Margaret's tone softened. Not every man is like Richard, you know. Callie winced at the mention of her ex-fiancé, who had ended their engagement 8 years ago, when caring for her parents became too much of a burden for him. This isn't about Richard, she insisted. Isn't it? You've been protecting yourself ever since he left. But Mom and Dad are gone now, Callie. You don't have to keep putting your life on hold. Before Callie could respond, her phone chimed with a text from Grayson. Morning. Hope you slept well. Any chance you're free for lunch? Margaret peeked over her shoulder and grinned. Say yes. I'm supposed to be helping you, Callie protested. We're almost done and Jenny won't be here until 2. Margaret nudged her. Go, have lunch with the handsome millionaire. Live a little. After a moment's hesitation, Callie replied, Lunch sounds nice. Where? His response came quickly. Meet me in the lobby at noon. Casual dress. Bringing you to my favorite spot. Not fancy, but authentic. At noon, Callie found Grayson waiting in the lobby. He looked different in casual clothes, jeans, a light cotton shirt and loafers without socks. More approachable, more real. You look nice, he said, his eyes warm as they took her in. She'd chosen a simple sundress and sandals, her hair loose around her shoulders. So do you, she replied, surprised by how happy she was to see him. He drove them in his car, not the flashy sports car she'd expected, but a classic Jeep Wagoneer with wood paneling. It was my grandfather's, he explained when he saw her surprise. I restored it myself. You restore cars too? Callie asked as they pulled away from the hotel. Just this one. I spent summers with my grandparents when I was younger. Some of my best memories are riding in this car with my grandfather, going fishing at dawn. This glimpse into his past made Grayson seem more human, not just a wealthy businessman, but someone with a history, with cherished memories, just like her. He took her to a small restaurant in a residential neighborhood, far from the tourist areas. It was barely more than a shack, with picnic tables outside and no air conditioning inside. Best shrimp po' boys in Charleston, Grayson said, as they joined the line of locals waiting to order. I hope you're not disappointed it's not somewhere. Fancy? Are you kidding? This is much better than fancy, Callie said truthfully. They ordered at the counter and found a spot at one of the picnic tables. The food came wrapped in paper, messy and delicious. Callie couldn't remember the last time she'd enjoyed a meal so much or company. So tell me about this wedding, Grayson said between bites. Is it going to be as over the top as I imagine? Probably worse, Callie laughed. My sister says the budget is tastefully extravagant, whatever that means. The Pearsons don't do anything small. I've known Richard Pearson, Daniel's father, for years. Business associates, not friends, he clarified. The man has strong opinions about everything, including who his son should marry. And he doesn't approve of my niece. It's not personal. Richard wouldn't approve of anyone who took his son's attention away from the family business. Grayson wiped his hands on a napkin. But enough about them. Tell me about your plans while you're here. Just the wedding stuff, really. Rehearsal dinner tonight, wedding tomorrow, then back to real life on Sunday. That's it? You come all the way to Charleston and don't see any of the city? Callie shrugged. I'm not really here as a tourist. That's a shame. Grayson leaned forward. What if I played tour guide tomorrow morning? Before the wedding, I could show you my Charleston, the places tourists don't know about. The idea was tempting. I don't want to impose on your time. You wouldn't be, he said simply. I want to show you. Looking into his earnest eyes, Callie found it impossible to say no. Okay, tomorrow morning. His smile was worth whatever complications might come from spending more time with him. After lunch, Grayson drove her back to the hotel. In the car, he asked, Have you thought any more about the wedding? About me accompanying you? Callie hesitated. I have. But I'm not sure it's a good idea. Because? Because this, whatever this is, isn't real. It's a vacation fling at best. What happens when I go back to Georgia? Grayson parked the car, but didn't move to get out. Why does something have to end just because it starts in an unusual way? Because that's how life works. People like you don't end up with people like me. Maybe you've been watching too many soap operas, he said, with a gentle teasing in his voice. Real life isn't that predictable, Callie. She laughed despite herself. Says the man who lives in a fancy hotel and sends designer dresses to women he just met. The hotel is temporary, my house is being renovated, and the dress was practical, not extravagant. His face grew serious. Don't use my circumstances as an excuse to keep me at a distance. The accuracy of his observations stunned her into silence. Come to the rehearsal dinner with me tonight, he said suddenly. What? I can't, it's for family and the wedding party, and their plus ones. His eyes held a challenge. Unless you're still determined to hide behind excuses. That's not fair, Callie protested. Maybe not, but am I wrong? Before she could answer, her phone rang. It was Margaret. I have to take this, she said, grateful for the interruption. Margaret was in a panic. The florist had mixed up some details for the rehearsal dinner, and she needed Callie to go to the venue immediately to sort it out. I have to go, Callie told Grayson after hanging up. Wedding emergency. Let me drive you. It's not far. I'll walk. She needed space to think, away from his persuasive presence. Grayson nodded, accepting her decision. Think about tonight, he said as she got out of the car. So I'll be waiting in the lobby at 6 if you decide to give us a real chance. The afternoon passed in a flurry of wedding preparations. Callie managed to fix the floral disaster, helped her frazzled niece practice her vows, and listened to Margaret fret about everything from the weather forecast to the seating arrangements. By the time she returned to her hotel room to get ready for the rehearsal dinner, she was exhausted. As she showered, she thought about Grayson's invitation. Part of her wanted to accept, the part that had been awakened by his attention, his interest in her as a person, not just a caretaker or reliable shoulder. But another part, the cautious part that had protected her from disappointment for so long, warned her that this was a recipe for heartbreak. Men like Grayson didn't stay interested in women like her. Eventually, the novelty would wear off. As she dried her hair, a knock came at her door. A hotel staff member stood there with another white box. Delivery for Ms. Monroe. Inside was another. Dress this one a deep green that would bring out her eyes. The note read, "No pressure. But if you decide to come, I thought you might like options. Either way, I'll be in the lobby at 6. Callie sat on the bed, the dress in her lap. This man was making it very hard to be practical. Her phone rang. Margaret. Again. The father of the groom is being difficult, her sister said without preamble. Apparently he's invited some business associate to the rehearsal dinner without telling anyone, and now we're scrambling to rearrange the seating. Do you have a +1 yet? Because if not, I'm going to have to put you at the cousins' table. Callie closed her eyes. The universe seemed determined to push her toward Grayson. Actually, she said slowly, I might have someone. After hanging up, Callie stared at the green dress. It was beautiful, and she knew it would fit perfectly, just like the blue one had. At 5:55, she entered the hotel lobby wearing the green dress and a pair of borrowed earrings from Margaret. Her hair was swept up in a simple but elegant style, and she'd taken more care with her makeup than usual. Grayson was already there, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit. His face lit up when he saw her, and he crossed the lobby to meet her. You came, he said, as if he couldn't quite believe it. I did. Callie smoothed the skirt of the dress. Thank you for this, it's beautiful. You're beautiful, he corrected. The dress is just fabric. Callie blushed. My sister called. Apparently the father of the groom has invited some business associate to the rehearsal dinner. They need extra bodies to balance the tables. Ah, Grayson's smile dimmed slightly. So I'm filling a chair? No, Callie said quickly. You're my +1, if you still want to be. The smile returned, brighter than before. I do. The rehearsal dinner was held at an upscale restaurant overlooking the harbor. Twinkling lights were strung across the terrace, and flowers adorned every surface. Callie introduced Grayson to her family, trying not to notice how Margaret's eyebrows shot up when she realized who Callie's date was. Grayson Fox, Margaret whispered when they had a moment alone. You didn't tell me it was that Grayson. Would it have made a difference? Of course not. But still, Margaret looked impressed. He can't take his eyes off you, you know. Callie glanced across the room where Grayson was chatting with Jenny's fiancé, Daniel. It's not serious, Meg. Don't make it into something it's not. The man sent you 2 designer dresses in 2 days. He's not looking for casual, sweetie. Before Callie could respond, a commotion at the entrance caught everyone's attention. Richard Pearson, Daniel's father, had arrived with his wife and a business associate in tow. Callie recognized the newcomer immediately, though it had been 8 years since she'd seen him. Richard, a somewhat older man with the same bearing as her date. Who invited Richard Pearson's wife's brother? She heard someone whisper. That's not his brother-in-law, another guest responded. That's Richard Pearson Jr., his older son from his first marriage, the one who moved to Atlanta. Across the room, Grayson had gone very still, his eyes fixed on the newcomer. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as Richard Jr. spotted Grayson and stopped short. What is he doing here? Richard Jr. demanded loudly, pointing at Grayson. The room fell silent. Daniel stepped forward, confusion on his face. Dad invited him, I think. No, Richard Sr. said, looking equally confused. I didn't invite Fox. All eyes turned to Grayson, who maintained his composure despite the sudden scrutiny. I'm here as Callie Monroe's guest, he said calmly. The aunt of the bride. Richard Jr. let out a harsh laugh. Of course you are, always working an angle. Aren't you, Fox? Callie felt rooted to the spot as tension filled the room. What was happening? How did these men know each other? Margaret appeared at her side. What's going on? She whispered. I have no idea, Callie whispered back. Richard Sr. took control of the situation, stepping between his son and Grayson. This is neither the time nor the place, Richard. We're here to celebrate Daniel and Jenny. Fine, Richard Jr. said, his voice tight. But don't expect me to break bread with the man who stole my wife. A collective gasp went through the room. Callie felt her stomach drop. Wife? Grayson had been married? To Richard Jr.'s wife? Grayson's jaw tightened, but he remained calm. That's ancient history, Richard, and not at all what happened, as you well know. What I know, Richard Jr. spat, is that I went away on business for 3 weeks and came home to find divorce papers and a moving truck. And 2 months later, she was on your arm at the Heritage Ball. That was 7 years ago, Grayson said, evenly. And Emily had left you long before she ever spoke to me. The tension was unbearable. Callie felt sick. Grayson had never mentioned an ex-wife, let alone one who had been married to someone else first. What else hadn't he told her? Jenny, the bride, looked close to tears. Daniel was trying to calm his brother while shooting apologetic looks at his fiancée. Margaret looked torn between fascination at the drama and concern for her daughter's special evening. Callie knew she had to do something. This was her fault. She had brought Grayson here. She crossed the room to where Grayson stood, still locked in a silent battle of wills with Richard Jr. Grayson, she said softly, maybe we should go. He looked down at her, regret in his eyes. I'm sorry, Callie. I had no idea Richard Jr. would be here. He lives in Atlanta now. I never would have... It's okay, she interrupted. But I think it would be best if we left. He nodded, then turned to address the room. My apologies to everyone, especially to the bride and groom. The last thing I wanted was to disrupt your celebration. Please, carry on and enjoy your evening. With dignity intact, he offered Callie his arm. She took it, feeling the eyes of everyone in the room on them as they made their exit. Outside, in the warm evening air, Callie finally breathed. What was that about? You were married to his wife? Grayson? Ran a hand through his hair, looking tired. No, not exactly. It's complicated. Uncomplicate it for me, Callie said, stepping away from him. Because right now I'm wondering what else you haven't told me. He sighed. Emily was Richard's wife, yes, but their marriage was over long before I met her. She left him because he was controlling and emotionally abusive. She'd already filed for divorce when we met at a charity function. And you started dating her? Not right away. We became friends. I helped her find a job, get back on her feet. Romance came later after her divorce was finalized, but that's not how he sees it. No, Richard Jr. has always blamed me for the failure of his marriage. It's easier than admitting he drove Emily away himself. Callie studied his face, looking for signs of deception. All she saw was resignation and a touch of sadness. Why didn't you tell me? Because it's not something I talk about casually. Emily. And I didn't last. The relationship was built on shaky ground from the start. She moved to California years ago. Grayson stepped closer. And because it didn't seem relevant to what's happening between us. Not relevant? Callie felt her temper flare. You don't think I deserve to know you had that kind of history with the groom's family before I brought you to the rehearsal dinner? You're right, Grayson admitted. I should have told you, but I honestly had no idea Richard Jr. would be here. He and his father barely speak. Callie wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm evening. This is exactly why this us doesn't make sense. Your life is complicated, Grayson, full of history and connections and drama that I know nothing about. Everyone has a past, Callie. Not everyone's past makes scenes at rehearsal dinners. She took a deep breath, trying to calm down. I should go back inside. My sister needs me, and I've caused enough drama for one night. Callie, please, don't let this ruin what we've started. She looked at him, this handsome, complicated man who had swept into her life so unexpectedly. I don't know what we've started, Grayson, and I'm not sure either of us can finish it. She turned to go, but he caught her hand. Tomorrow morning. Our tour. Please don't cancel. Callie hesitated. I don't think that's a good idea. One more chance, he said quietly. That's all I'm asking. Let me show you my Charleston. After that, if you still want to walk away, I'll respect your decision. She should say no. The practical, self-protective part of her was screaming to end this now, before she got any more invested, before she got hurt. But another part, a part that had been silent for too long, whispered that maybe, just maybe, something real was worth the risk. What time? She asked finally. Relief washed over his face. 8. I'll meet you in the lobby. 8, she confirmed, then pulled her hand from his and walked back into the restaurant, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life, or finally doing something right. Inside, the party had recovered from the earlier drama. Margaret intercepted her immediately. Where's your handsome millionaire? Gone, it's complicated. Margaret's eyes were sympathetic. Men usually are. Are you okay? Callie nodded. I'm fine. Let's focus on Jenny and Daniel. This is their night. But as she rejoined the celebration, making small talk and smiling at all the right moments, Callie's mind was elsewhere, with a troubled-eyed man who had somehow managed to complicate her carefully uncomplicated life in less than 48 hours. And despite her best efforts to deny it, she was already looking forward to 8 o'clock the next morning. Callie woke early the next morning, her dreams a jumbled mess of wedding dresses and angry confrontations. After the drama at the rehearsal, dinner, she'd spent a restless night questioning her decision to meet Grayson again. Margaret had cornered her after Richard Jr. left, demanding details. Callie had shared what little she knew, which only led to more questions she couldn't answer. Are you sure you want to get involved with someone with that kind of baggage? Margaret had asked. It was a fair question. The practical answer was no. But as Callie dressed for her morning with Grayson, she admitted to herself that practicality wasn't driving her decisions anymore. She chose a casual outfit, jeans, a light blouse, comfortable walking shoes, no borrowed finery today. If Grayson was going to show her his Charleston, she wanted to be herself. At precisely 8, she found him waiting in the lobby. He wore khaki pants and a faded blue button-down with the sleeves rolled up, looking more like a local tour guide than a wealthy developer. You came, he said, relief evident in his voice. I said I would. After last night, I wouldn't have blamed you for changing your mind. Grayson's expression was contrite. I'm sorry about what happened. I never meant to cause a scene. I know. Despite herself, Callie believed him. So, what's the plan for this morning? His face brightened. I thought we'd start with breakfast at a place tourists never find, then a walking tour of my favorite spots in the old city. Lead on, Callie said, falling into step beside him as they left the hotel. The morning air was fresh, with a hint of salt from the harbor. Grayson led her down quiet side streets, away from the main tourist areas, pointing out historical details most visitors missed, hidden gardens, architectural quirks, spots where Revolutionary War heroes had once stood. How? Do you know all this? Callie asked as they paused to admire an ancient oak tree draped with Spanish moss. My grandfather was a Charleston historian. He used to take me on walks like this when I was a boy. Grayson's eyes softened with memory. He believed knowing the past was essential to building the future. Is that why you became a developer? To build the future? Partly, though not the way my father wanted. Grayson guided her down another narrow street. He saw development as profit. I see it as preservation with purpose. What does that mean? It means I buy historical properties that others would tear down, and I find ways to make them viable while keeping their character. Pride crept into his voice. Like the old textile factory we're passing now. It was slated for demolition when I bought it. Now it's affordable artists' studios and apartments. Callie looked at the renovated brick building with new interest. That's not what I expected. Because rich developers are supposed to be greedy and soulless. There was no bitterness in his tone, just gentle teasing. Something like that, she admitted. I have my share of luxury projects too, he said, but they fund the ones that matter more to me. They stopped at a tiny cafe tucked away on a residential corner. The elderly woman behind the counter greeted Grayson by name and insisted on making their breakfast herself. They sat at a small table by the window, eating the best biscuits Callie had ever tasted and drinking coffee from mismatched mugs. Mrs. Patterson has been making those biscuits since I was in high school, Grayson said. I used to ride my bike here every Saturday morning. You grew up nearby? Callie asked, realizing how little she knew about his past. About 6 blocks that way, he said, pointing. My family home is still there, though my parents are gone now. I have a place on the water, but it's being renovated. Hence the hotel suite. And the Emily situation? Callie ventured, unable to ignore the elephant in the room any longer. Does that happen often? Running into angry exes? Grayson set down, his coffee mug. No. Charleston is a small city in some ways, but not that small. Richard Jr. moved to Atlanta years ago. He held her gaze steadily. And for the record, I'm not in the habit of dating women who are still married. Whatever Richard believes. But you did date his ex-wife. Yes. Emily and I were together for about a year. It ended badly, not because of Richard, but because we were both using each other to heal from other wounds. Not a good foundation. And since then, Callie couldn't help asking, a few relationships. Nothing that lasted. He smiled ruefully. Turns out having money complicates dating in ways I never expected. It's hard to know if someone wants me or what I can give them. Callie understood the sentiment, though from the opposite perspective. After another sip of coffee, she asked, So why me? What made you decide not to call security when you found me in your bed? Grayson considered the question. Honestly, you looked so peaceful and so real. Not polished or perfect, just human. His eyes crinkled at the corners. Then you mumbled about peach cobbler and I was intrigued. So I have my grandmother's recipe to thank for this tour? Partly, but mostly it was the way you handled yourself the next morning. Embarrassed but dignified. Most women I know would have either flirted their way out of the situation or had a meltdown. I considered both, Callie admitted, making him laugh. After breakfast, they continued their walk through the historic district. Grayson showed her secret courtyards and hidden alleyways telling stories about the city's past that no guidebook contained. He took her to a small tucked-away park where he'd played as a child and to the bakery that had made his birthday cakes for 18 years. It was the most personal tour Callie could imagine, a glimpse not just of Charleston, but of the boy Grayson had been and the man he'd become. As the morning warmed, they found themselves at the harbor watching boats glide across the sparkling water. One last stop, Grayson said, leading her toward a weathered building that appeared abandoned. A faded sign read, Charleston Harbor Inn. What is this place? Callie asked as he produced a key and unlocked the front door. A piece of history, and maybe something more. Grayson held the door for her. After you. Callie stepped inside, blinking as her eyes adjusted to the dimmer light. The interior was dusty but intact, a grand old lobby with a sweeping staircase, antique furniture, covered in drop cloths, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. This used to be one of Charleston's finest small hotels, Grayson explained, moving through the space with obvious familiarity. Built in 1895, operated until 1985. It's been empty since then. It's beautiful, Callie said, running her fingers along a wooden banister. Even under all this dust you can see it. I thought you might recognize its potential. Grayson watched her explore with a small smile. I bought it last year. Been trying to decide what to do with it. You could restore it as a hotel, Callie suggested, wandering into what must have been a dining room. These views are incredible. That's one option. Grayson followed her, but I was thinking of something more specific. Like what? Like a bed and breakfast. He said the words casually, but his eyes were intent on her face. The kind with wrap-round porches and gardens for growing herbs, maybe rooms named after literary characters. Callie froze, her heart suddenly racing. That sounds familiar. It should. It's your dream. Grayson stepped closer. I've been looking for the right project and the right person to bring it to life. Grayson, just listen, he said quickly. I'm not proposing anything crazy, just a business partnership to start. This building, your vision, we could turn it into exactly the kind of place you described. Callie shook her head, overwhelmed. Oh, you can't be serious, we barely know each other. I know enough. His voice was earnest now. I know you're smart and capable. I know you understand hospitality in a way I never could. And I know this building has been sitting empty for a year because I was waiting for the right idea. A business partnership, Callie repeated, trying to wrap her head around the concept. Based on 3 days of conversation. Sometimes you just know. Grayson spread his hands. Look, I'm not asking for an answer today. The wedding is this afternoon. You go back to Georgia tomorrow. Take some time, think about it. And then what? And then call me. If you're interested, we'll talk details. If not, no harm done. His smile was gentle. No pressure, Callie. Just an open door, if you want to walk through it. Callie moved to one of the windows, looking out at the harbor. The possibility Grayson was offering was almost too enormous to comprehend. Her dream, handed to her on a silver platter. Why? She asked finally. Why would you do this? Grayson came to stand beside her. Partly because I think it makes business sense. This location, your expertise, it could be something special. And the other part. He turned to face her. Because in 3 days you've made me feel more alive than I have in years. Because when you talk about your dream, your whole face lights up. Because I think we could be good together, Callie Monroe. In business, and maybe in other ways too. His honesty took her breath away. This is insane, she whispered. Maybe. Grayson touched her cheek gently. Or maybe it's the sanest thing either of us has done in a long time. Standing in that dusty, beautiful old building, with the Charleston harbor spread out before them, Callie felt something shift inside her. The practical voice that had guided her for so long was suddenly quiet, replaced by something that felt suspiciously like hope. I need time, she said finally. You have it. Grayson's hand fell away from her face. No rush, no pressure. They left the old inn, locking the past and perhaps the future behind them. The walk back to the hotel was quieter, both lost in their own thoughts. In the lobby, Grayson stopped. I should let you get ready for the wedding. Will you be there? Callie asked. After what happened last night, I'll keep my distance. He smiled wryly. Richard Jr. is flying back to Atlanta this morning, according to Daniel, but I understand if you'd rather I stay away. Callie thought about it. No, come, just maybe sit in the back. Hope flickered in his eyes. If you're sure. I'm not sure. About anything right now, she admitted, but I know I want you there. He nodded, his expression softening. Until this afternoon, then. Callie watched him walk away, her mind spinning with possibilities she'd never allowed herself to consider before. The wedding was everything a Charleston society wedding should be, elegant, excessive, and picture-perfect. Jenny was radiant in her designer gown, and Daniel looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. Even Richard Sr. seemed to have mellowed overnight, beaming proudly as his son said his vows. Callie, seated in the family section, spotted Grayson at the back of the church. He gave her a small wave but kept his promise to keep his distance. She found herself watching him during the ceremony, wondering what it would be like to build something with him, both a business and whatever else might grow between them. At the reception, held in the garden of a historic mansion, Callie was swept up in family obligations, photos, toasts, dancing with distant relatives she barely remembered. It wasn't until the evening was well underway that she managed to slip away from the crowd. She found a quiet spot in the garden, away from the music and laughter. The night air was warm, fragrant with jasmine and magnolia. Charleston had a magic to it, she had to admit. A sense of history and possibility tangled together. Hiding, Grayson's voice came from behind her. Callie turned to find him watching her, a glass of champagne in each hand. He offered one to her. "Taking a break," she corrected, accepting the glass. "It's been a long day. Your niece looks happy." "She does." Callie smiled. "They both do. Young love." Grayson sipped his champagne. "Remember that feeling, when anything seemed possible?" "Vaguely," Callie admitted. "It's been a while." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the reception a distant backdrop. "I've been thinking about your offer," Callie said finally. "You don't have to decide now." "I know, but I've been thinking anyway." She turned to face him fully. "It's too big, Grayson, too much, too fast." Disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded. "I understand." "No, I don't think you do." Callie set down her champagne glass. "I can't accept a ready-made dream. That's not how dreams work. They're supposed to be earned, built piece by piece." "Is that what your grandmother would say?" Grayson asked quietly. The question caught her off guard. "What?" "The woman who taught you to make peach cobbler. Would she tell you to turn down an opportunity because it came too easily?" Callie thought about her grandmother, practical but fiercely determined. "No," she admitted. "She'd probably tell me to grab it with both hands and not look back." Smart woman. But this isn't just about the business opportunity. Callie met his gaze. "This is about us, whatever that means, and 3 days isn't enough time to figure that out." Grayson stepped closer. "What if we had more time?" "What do you mean?" "I'm asking you to stay, Callie, not forever, just a week or two. Get to know Charleston better, get to know me better." His eyes were earnest. "No commitment beyond that. Just time to explore possibilities. I have a job, responsibilities that you could take a vacation from," he suggested. "When was the last time you took a real break?" Callie couldn't remember. Years, probably. "Stay," Grayson said again, softer this time. "Let's see if this is real or just a vacation fantasy." Before she could answer, Margaret appeared, slightly breathless. "There you are. Jenny's about to toss the bouquet, and she's looking for you." "I'll be right there," Callie promised. To Grayson, she said, "I need to go." "Think about it," he said. "Whatever you decide, I'll respect it." Callie rejoined the reception, dutifully standing with the single women as Jenny prepared to toss her bouquet. She wasn't even trying to catch it, but somehow the cluster of white roses and peonies arced directly into her arms. Margaret squealed with delight, while Callie stood frozen, the symbolic weight of the flowers heavy in her hands. Across the crowd, her eyes found Grayson's. He was smiling, as if the universe had just confirmed what he already knew. The morning after the wedding, Callie stood in her hotel room, staring at her packed suitcase. Her flight back to Georgia was in 3 hours. Margaret had already left for the airport, heading home to Atlanta with her husband. On the desk lay Grayson's business card, beside a single rose that had been delivered to her door the previous night. The card attached had read, "Room service is better with you here." Callie picked up her phone and dialed the number on the card. Grayson answered on the second ring. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm. "Morning," Callie took a deep breath. "About your offer?" "Yes?" The hope in his voice was palpable. "I can't stay right now. I need to go back to Georgia, at least temporarily. There are things I need to handle, people who depend on me." "I understand," Grayson said, the disappointment evident despite his attempt to hide it. "But," Callie continued, "I'd like to explore the B&B idea. Maybe start with some plans, some research, see if it's viable." "Really?" The hope was back, stronger than before. Yes, and maybe if you're willing to meet me halfway, we could explore the other possibilities too. Halfway? Grayson asked, confused. Cooperville is only 4 hours from Charleston, Callie explained. You have a car. I have weekends off. There was a pause, then Grayson laughed. Are you asking me to come visit you, Callie Monroe? I'm suggesting we don't have to rush, but we don't have to end things either. Callie surprised herself with her boldness. Unless you're only interested if I drop everything and move to Charleston immediately. I'm interested in you, Grayson said simply. The rest is just details. Relief washed over Callie. Good, because I'd like to see where this goes, even if it's complicated by distance for a while. They made plans for the following weekend. Grayson would drive to Cooperville, see her small town, meet her friends. A chance for him to understand her world, the way she'd glimpsed his. After hanging up, Callie finished packing with a lighter heart. Maybe this thing with Grayson was crazy. Maybe it would fizzle out once the novelty wore off. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something real. 4 weeks later, Callie stood in the lobby of the Charleston Harbor Inn, watching workers carefully remove decades of dust and neglect. The renovation had begun, funded by Grayson but guided by her vision. They had agreed to start small, just 6 guest rooms, a dining area, and the beautiful lobby restored to its former glory. The past month had been a whirlwind of weekend visits. Grayson to Cooperville, Callie to Charleston, and daily phone calls that often lasted until midnight. With each conversation, each shared meal, each quiet moment together, the connection between them deepened. What do you think? Grayson asked, coming to stand beside her. Is it what you imagined? Callie looked around the space that was slowly coming back to life. It's better, because it's actually happening. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Have you thought about the name? I have, actually. Callie squeezed his hand. What about room for one more? Grayson raised an eyebrow. That's specific, meaning? It's how this all started. You making room for me even when you didn't have to. Callie smiled up at him. It seems fitting. I like it. Grayson pulled her closer. It's perfect, actually. Room for one more. As workers bustled around them, transforming the old building into something new while preserving its heart, Callie leaned against Grayson's shoulder. The past month had shown her that their worlds, while different, weren't incompatible. His wealth still made her uncomfortable sometimes, but his generosity was genuine, not manipulative, and he'd kept his word about meeting her halfway, not just physically by visiting Cooperville, but emotionally, by respecting her. Need for independence while offering support. I have something for you, Grayson said, reaching into his pocket. He produced a small brass key on a ribbon. It's not what you think, he added quickly when he saw her expression. It's the original key to this building. I found it in the city. Archives. Callie took it, feeling the weight of history in her palm. It's beautiful. I thought it could be a symbol of old things becoming new again, of doors opening instead of closing. Are you always this romantic? Callie teased, though she was touched by the gesture. Only with you, Grayson replied, his eyes serious despite his smile. You bring it out, in me. Later that evening they returned to the Charleston Grand, to the suite where they had first met. Grayson had kept it, even though his house renovation was complete. For sentimental reasons, he'd said, when Callie questioned the expense. They entered. Callie noticed something new, a small plaque beside the door that hadn't been there that morning. It read, "This room reserved for the woman who fell asleep and woke me up." When did you do this? She asked, touching the brass plate. This afternoon. Grayson wrapped his arms around her from behind. Too much? Maybe a little, Callie admitted, though she was smiling. But I love it anyway. Inside, everything was as it had been that first morning. Warm lighting, soft sheets, even chocolate on the pillows. But this time there was no confusion, no embarrassment. Just two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way. Grayson handed her a mug of coffee, just as he had that first morning. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his own mug. "And to wrong room keys," Callie added, clinking her mug against his. As evening settled over Charleston, They stood together on the balcony watching the lights of the harbor. Callie thought about how much had changed in just 1 month. She had a new purpose, a new direction, and somewhere along the way, she had stopped being afraid of taking risks. "What are you thinking?" Grayson asked, his arm warm around her shoulders. "I'm thinking that sometimes the best things in life happen when we least expect them." Callie leaned into him, "and that I'm glad I was too tired to check the room number that night." "So am I," Grayson murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. In the room behind them, the bed waited, the same bed where their story had begun. But tonight, unlike that first night, Callie wouldn't be alone. And tomorrow morning when she woke up, Grayson would be there, coffee ready, barefoot and smiling, not because fate had thrown them together, but because they had chosen each other, deliberately, with eyes wide open and hearts finally ready. And, for the first time in years, neither of them would wake up alone.